A research interest that I have is emotional learning for scientific literacy, and often emotions aren't normally associated with science learning, but I think if we think back to our experiences in the classroom, learning is an emotional experience. So it's really important that aside from switching students on to the learning that's taking place, it's really important to engage students' emotions, because it's when we engage students in a positive way in terms of their emotional well-being in the classroom, they're going to be more receptive to learning and learn better. A lot of the research that I do is classroom-based, and over a few years now I've been looking at students developing scientific literacy in the middle school. So that's about their science knowledge and understanding and attitudes and skills that would allow people in an everyday context to, I guess, participate in society in a full way. So scientific literacy is very important in that sense. And we know that it's really challenging to develop student scientific literacy, particularly in a middle school context. We know that young children come into primary school really switched on and engaged in science, and then somewhere we lose them along the way and they become disengaged, particularly that primary and secondary interface. So the research that I've been doing has focused on classroom approaches that might better engage middle school students in science and hopefully encourage them to take senior science and then perhaps consider science as a career as well. So some of those projects have included looking at different forms of writing in science. For example, we know that a lot of us write science reports and so forth in high school. Why not write stories and narratives as an example? So looking at different forms of representation that might inspire a wider range of students to study science, rather than the usual students who we know would normally do well anyhow and probably pursue science in university. I guess the quality of science education is an important political agenda. We hear a lot about in the media about trying to increase participation in science in schools, for girls increasing participation in science in schools, and getting students involved more broadly, because we know that participation in school science is generally declining across the different science disciplines in school. So I guess the work that we do in science education is pretty important in terms of finding better ways to engage students. So that's, I guess, one aspect of it. And the other aspect is working with teachers in schools to find better ways of implementing these approaches. So in terms of the work that we do within the School of Education, it's working with teachers and students to find ways to make a positive contribution to that issue. And where possible within the school, we also do undertake some cross-faculty collaboration with the School of Science and Engineering, and we get our pre-service teachers involved in projects that the science and engineering faculty might be undertaking that focus on work in school. So it's building those collaborative partnerships in a positive way as well. It's really important that teachers love science. We know that there are challenges in inspiring teachers to have confidence when they're teaching science. So part of my role as a teacher educator here at JCU is to motivate students and to think of themselves as being confident teachers of science when they're in the classroom one day. We are encouraged at JCU to pass on our research and the findings of our research to the students that we teach. So aside from disseminating that research to our broader professional community, we do feed this back to the teachers in our community as well, but also our pre-service teachers, so that they see, I guess, the applied nature of the research that we do. And it's also important for them to understand the nature of our work as academics in the university as well.